So the big question that everyone has been asking since November was whether or not Henry Cavill's CGI was worth it. And now that the results are in, I think it's obvious to say Justice League was absolutely a sacrifice needed because this movie is so good. Mission Impossible Fallout. Just to go over a couple housekeeping items in case you're new to these videos. I'm going to be talking my initial thoughts on this movie without giving away spoilers for the first half of this video. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, stick around and I'll tell you why you need to see it, and I'll give you a warning when I'm about to talk about spoilers. So in case you're unfamiliar with this franchise, it's based off a television series that was set in the 60s. These movies are a reboot of that original series and have been making movies since 1996. Which is actually crazy to think because it's taken 22 years. This is the 6th movie in the franchise. And right now, this is looking like it's the best one. Critics everywhere are agreeing that this is a movie that needs to be seen. And I have to agree. When I walked out of this theater, I wanted to immediately see it again. And honestly, I probably will. Something you need to be aware of watching these movies is that every single stunt is actually done by the actors. Tom Cruise specifically is such a daredevil when it comes to these movies, and every single time he's trying to one-up himself. There's very little CGI in these movies, no stunt doubles, and that honestly just raises the stakes of how dangerous these missions actually are. I don't want to necessarily knock a movie like Avengers because I love that movie, but when you're watching that, it's a completely different experience. If you see Spider-Man or Iron Man falling from the sky, it's not that big of a deal to you because you know they're not actually falling there. You know it's done on a green screen, they're hooked up to all these wires. But for Tom Cruise and other actors in this movie, it's completely different. When you see Tom Cruise scaling a building, he's actually scaling that actual building. When you see him flying a helicopter, he actually has his helicopter license and is flying it by himself, doing all these dangerous maneuvers. Watching the movie through that perspective completely changes it. And you can really tell that these action scenes are the top priority that they have when making these movies. If you haven't seen any of the previous Mission Impossibles, I cannot recommend them enough. The interesting thing about the other ones though, is they kind of get better as they go along. Now the first two were great, they're fun to watch, but I think everyone kind of agrees that the second one is probably the weakest of the series. Mission Impossible 3 comes along, and it gets better, and you think it's probably the best one yet. Then comes Ghost Protocol, followed by Rogue Nation, and those two movies set the bar so much higher than the first three could have ever done. And like I said before, now we have the 6th movie, and it is by far my favorite one. Which that fact alone is so crazy to me. Because when does that happen within a franchise where the 6th movie is probably the best one? Now for me, there are several reasons why this movie is the best for me. Like I already said, the action scenes in this movie are incredible. And I honestly think they are the best action scenes we have seen so far in this franchise. Another thing that was so great about this movie was the addition of Henry Cavill. Honestly, if I had to pick one flaw about this movie, I wish he was in it more. And don't get me wrong, he's in this movie a lot and has some great scenes, but there's a couple scenes in particular where I just wanted more action from him because he is so entertaining to watch alongside Tom Cruise. And honestly, the rest of the actors in this movie were incredible as well. Every single one of them sold it. And again, I cannot emphasize this enough. The fact that they all do their own stunts just make this movie so much better. The set pieces in this movie are once again fantastic, just like every other one. The cities they go to, the streets that they're having car chases through, it is so delightful to watch, and the film quality is some of the best I've seen in an action movie in a long time. So you should absolutely see this movie in theaters, preferably IMAX or Dolby or anything that can give you the best viewing experience. So that's it for the no spoilers. If you would like to hear my thoughts on the rest of the movie, please keep watching. If not, turn this video off now and I will see you next time. Every time I watch one of these movies, I keep telling myself I am not going to fall for the mask scene. And here they got me again, twice. I think the fact that they're able to do that every single movie says so much about the camera angles they use. Because that's honestly the way they're able to do this. We knew 100% that Benji was putting on a mask. We saw him sit down in that cell and put on that mask. Now maybe you didn't fall for it and saw it coming the whole time. I did not. I completely fell for it. And I also fell for it the first time with Wolf Blitzer, which was so funny to me. So a twist I did see coming from a mile away was Walker turning evil. I spoke about this a little bit in a previous video of the good guy coming on and all of a sudden he turns out to be evil and it's just so overdone. So I will say that's another little complaint I had about this movie. Now did it work for this film? I think it did, yes. But if they were going for initial shock value, I think they absolutely lost that, at least with me. That being said, Henry Cavill has some of the best scenes. That fight scene towards the beginning in the bathroom was one of the best fight scenes I have ever watched. And then later on, somehow Superman turns into Two-Face. And that death, was so gruesome of him falling down that mountain. You could just feel that hook going through his skull and it was just Ooh, so bad. I absolutely loved the use of Ethan's ex-wife in this movie. I thought it was a great way to bring her back into the story in just a natural way and not in a cheesy one at all. I also really enjoyed the character of White Widow, and I hope to see her in more of these movies. Maybe this was obvious to everyone else, but I did not realize until after the movie that that was Max's daughter from the first movie. And if you haven't seen the first movie, that probably means nothing to you, but it's a really cool hint, and I hope they use that later on in future movies. I do think the overall overtone of this Mission Impossible movie was different than all the other movies. And we've seen this trend over the past couple films. It used to be about the agency, it used to be about IMF, but in other movies, and this one specifically, IMF is really reduced to 3 characters. I guess 4 if you were to count Alec Baldwin. But really, this movie is about Ethan, Luther, and Benji. And they're kind of, in a way, drifting away from IMF and kind of doing this new thing. I think Rebecca Ferguson is a great addition to this cast, and I love her relationship with the team. But I think that's what makes this movie kind of stand out from the other ones. The overall plot was very simple. To find this plutonium that they initially lost in the first scene. Like, if that first scene would have went differently, this whole movie wouldn't have existed. But it's what they do with that simple plot that makes it great. But this first scene reveals so much about Ethan's character. The way that he was not willing to give up Luther for that plutonium says everything. And when Luther's explained that in one of the last scenes, it is such a touching moment and really comes full circle. But it still doesn't really feel like Mission Impossible. There's not really an impossible mission here. Now, if anything, it's a difficult mission. It's one you had to maneuver because you don't know who you can trust. But there's not this goal that seems so far-fetched to reach that you need to use all this cool technology for, like previous films. It's just a simple plot with a lot of twists in the way. And I enjoyed that about this. Now, I do have a special place for previous Mission Impossible movies, and I think they're great in their own respect. But looking at it as a full film, I think this one is by far my favorite. So let me know what you think. Is this your favorite Mission Impossible yet? Or did it not meet your standard? And if so, which one is? I look forward to seeing so many more of these movies until Tom Cruise dies doing it. So comment below, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.